Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Simplified Basic Concepts. This is the third video in the series of staffing. In my previous two videos, I've covered about staffing, importance of staffing, process of staffing, and about recruitment. And here I'll be covering the second element of staffing, which is selection. Now we're very clear that staffing is related to human resources, which is the most important asset for any organization. And the first element of staffing is recruitment, in which the basic focus is to attract the potential candidates and encourage them to apply for the vacant position in the organization. Now, when all the applications are received in the recruitment process, then starts the selection process. And in selection, the choosing of the most suitable candidate is done from the applicants who have applied for the job. So it is a process of offering job to the most desired candidate. So once the potential candidates are identified, the next step is to evaluate the qualification, qualities, experience, capabilities, etc. to make the selection. So selection here basically means choosing a few from those who have applied. That is, in recruitment, we saw that a potential pool of candidates is created, right? And selection means choosing from those lot the best one. So it is the picking up of applicants or candidates with requisite qualification and qualities who have the potential to fill the vacant job in the organization. So now if we see the definitions, as per Harold Kuhn's, selection is the process of choosing from the candidates from within the organization or from outside the most suitable person for the current position or for the future positions. Here Kuhn's in his definition says that selection is a process of choosing the potential candidate. Right. Now the choice can be done from the applicants or from the candidates who are within the organization or who are from outside the organization. This we discussed in the recruitment, that is in sources of recruitment, which are internal source of recruitment and external source of recruitment, right? And the most suitable person for the current position or for the future position. Now this means that either the position is vacant now, that is currently in the organization, so to fill that position selection is done, or maybe in future some positions will be vacant, so to fill that the selection is done. Now how can an organization know that in future also some positions will be vacant? That is known when manpower planning is done by the organization. So in manpower planning, basically a plan is made of how much requirement of human resources will be there in an organization. Manpower planning, the current and future positions which can be vacant or which will be vacant in the organizations are known, right? Now, Dale Yoder said that selection is the process by which candidates for the employment are divided into classes, those who will be offered employment and those who will not be offered employment, right? So, Dale Yoder said that selection is a process here where two things are done. Either the employment is given to the candidate or the employment is not given to the candidate. Now, here we see that the selection is why called as negative process, right? I hope you remember that in recruitment, we discussed that recruitment is a positive process, because in recruitment, the basic focus was only to attract the potential candidate and encourage them to apply for the vacant position. But in selection, the rejection is done. That is, the most suitable candidate is only chosen for the vacant position and rest all other are rejected. That is why selection is said to be a negative process, right? Now, David and Robbins said selection process is a managerial decision-making process as to predict which job applicants will be successful if hired, right? Now, the selection process. So, the selection process begins with receiving applications. Then the stage comes is of screening of the applications. Then employment tests. Then comes interview. Reference check is done. Then medical examination, and finally the selection. So now let's understand each step one by one. Now once the recruitment process is completed, then starts the selection process. Now selection process starts with completion of the application blank by the candidate. Right. So application blank is basically a formal record of an individual applicants for the employment. So here the applicants basically need to mention their name, address, telephone number. They need to give their work experience, hobbies, interest, right? So by this application blank, the hiring manager gets a glimpse and an idea about the candidate. Now, which is very helpful for the hiring manager to find the relevancy of the candidate with the requirement of the job. Right. So the basic information about the work experience, hobbies, and what are his interests and educational qualification are being matched here with the requirement of the vacant position. Then starts the second step. After the completion of application blank starts the second step, which is screening of the applications. So when the application blank or application form is completed, then the screening of those applications are done. And in screening, the relevant candidates are being selected based on the criteria like their qualification, work experience, etc. So whichever candidates application has the matching qualification, work experience, and etc. things are being positively selected and being further processed for the next round of for selection, and the one who are not found relevant are being rejected at this stage. And the screening of application is done by the hiring manager or special screening committee, whoever is responsible at that stage. Now the next round in the selection process is employment tests. The employment tests or the selection tests are basically the device that uncovers the information about the candidate which is not known through the application blank. Now we saw that in application blank the basic information about the candidate is being filled. Right. Now, whatever information about the candidate is not known, those type of informations are being extracted through the employment tests. So according to Lee J. Grumbach, a test is a systematic procedure for comparing the behavior of two or more persons. Right. The selection tests are conducted mainly to fulfill the following person. The first is for selection and placement of new employees. Now, for appraising employees for promotional potential, that is the employees who are selected and who are placed in the organization, for them also selection tests are used for appraising them, so that if they are found that they are doing their work nicely, then they can be given promotions. Then third is for counseling employees to enable them to perform better in their jobs. So here basically we'll be focusing the first purpose of the selection test, that is for selection and placement of new employees. So for types of employment tests or selection tests are aptitude tests, achievement tests, interest tests, situational tests, and personality tests. Now the aptitude test is further bifurcated into intelligence test, mechanical aptitude test, psychomotor test, and clerical aptitude test. Now let's understand this one by one. See, aptitude test is also known as potential ability test, and it is basically used to measure the latent ability of a candidate to learn a given job if he or she is given required training. Now, latent ability means those abilities which exists in an individual but they are not yet developed. So, aptitude tests basically wants to test the ability of an individual, that whether he can learn those skills and enhance the ability or those skills which are in him, but that's not completely developed yet, right? So the different type of aptitude test is mental or intelligence test. Now this mental or intelligence tests measures the overall intelligence or IQ. IQ is intelligent quotient of a person. It also measures the capacity of comprehensive reasoning, word fluency, verbal comprehension, and other factors, right? So this is basically related to the mental or intelligence of an individual. Now second is mechanical aptitude test. This test is frequently used for technical positions and measures the capacity to apply mechanical principles to solve problems. The psychomotor test is used for determining the precision, coordination, control, dexterity, and reaction time for candidate in the hiring process, right? So it accesses the ability of a candidate to understand and follow the instructions and accordingly perform the motor responses. Now, the last of the aptitude test is clerical aptitude test. This test looks on specific capabilities which are required for office work, like checking and correcting spelling mistakes, copying, typing letters, keeping office records, files, dispatching the mail from one place to another, and other administrative requirements of the office. So this was aptitude test. Now, second comes achievement test. So the achievement test is again bifurcated into two, which is job knowledge test and work sample test. So the achievement test is known as proficiency test or performance test. Achievement test basically measures the proficiency, mastery, and understanding of general and specific area of knowledge of the candidate. So it measures what and how much individual has learnt. Right? The achievement test is again further bifurcated into two tests. One is job knowledge test. The job knowledge test is an assessment test used to So the job knowledge test is an assessment test which is used to judge an individual's factual knowledge about the various aspects of a specific job. And the work sample tests are method used to assess an individual's ability to successfully perform a job. These tests require individuals to perform tasks that are physically or psychologically similar to those they would experience on the job, right? So the job knowledge tests checks the factual knowledge, that is the theoretical part, and the work sample test tests the practical part, that is how successfully can an individual perform the job with the knowledge which he is having, right? Now, the third type of test is situational test, and the situational test again is bifurcated into two, in-basket and group discussion method. In situational tests, it is used to find out basic characteristics of an individual, like what is the value system, reaction time, and maturity of the candidate, right? So a candidate is observed in his real life situation. In this, he is told to involve himself with other candidates to solve a critical situation by bringing out his ideas. So here basically the thing which is focused is to find out how a person reacts and behaves when he is with others in a critical situation, right? So here the application power of an individual is seen, that how far can he apply his knowledge in practical situations and can work with other in critical situation or real life situations. So the first subdivision of the situational test is group discussion. So in group discussion, basically a topic of common interest is given to a group to discuss and to arrive at a conclusion, right? So when a group is sitting, some people are in favor of the topic which is given and some people are in opposition of the topic which is given. So here a good discussion goes on between the entire group and the conclusion is to be arrived at the end of the discussion. So here basically the focus is on candidate's ability to communicate, his leadership quality, how well he can lead the entire group so that there is a fruitful discussion, how much can he introduce valuable ideas during the group discussion, for coordination skills, and finally conclude the subject in a cordial manner are judged, right? So here basically the things which are seen is how a candidate behaves in a group. How in a group can he communicate properly? How far can he show his leadership quality in a group? How much can he put his valuable ideas while discussing things in common in a group? And how well can he coordinate the entire group and finally conclude? Right? Next is basket method. Here test is conducted through a basket containing different types of letters, requests, orders, etc. So here basically a container or a basket is present in which different types of letters, requests, all are put together, and these are to be analyzed by the candidate. In this, a candidate's capability to understand the subject of each paper will bring out his perception, conception, investigation, and decision-making abilities. Situational tests basically tests the way in which an individual behave in a certain situation, right? So in group discussion, the basic focus was to see how a person or a candidate behaves when he is discussing things in a group. And in basket method, the main focus is like when spontaneously a subject or a request or letters is given to an individual, how does he behave, and in a proper manner, how can he take decisions, right? Then comes personality test, and in personality test, the two subdivisions are objective test and projective tests. The personality tests aims at measuring the basic characteristics of an individual. These tests assesses his or her introversion, motivation, emotional reaction, value system, ability to adjust, interpersonal relations, and so on. So this test basically focuses on the personality of an individual, right? This test is further subdivided into two tests. First is objective, second is projective. The objective test is intended to minimize the subjectivity or bias on the part of the individual administering the measures, right? Therefore, the responses or options are structured in such a way here that the examinees only get few options like true or false, or in Likert scale the options are being given. So the basic focus of objective test is to objectively measure the personality of an individual. And in projective test, it is the personality test designed to let a person respond to stimuli revealing hidden emotions and internal conflicts projected through the tests, right? So this test basically focuses on the personality of an individual and tries to find out what basically is the personality of the employee who is applying for the vacant position in the organization. Now then comes interest test. This is very simple. The interest test has been designed to discover a person's field of interest and to identify the kind of work that will satisfy the candidate. So they are in sense inventories of likes and dislikes of the people of same occupation, right? Different people working on the same profile too can have different likes and dislikes because every people have different interest areas. So here these tests are developed in such a way that they are also called as tailor-made tests because it differs from person to person. The most widely used interest test is Kudo reference record, and it consists of three forms. The first form of the Kudo reference record test measures the vocational interest of the individual, such as his artistic, literary, music interest, etc. Then the interest in personal areas such as group activities, avoiding conflicts, etc. are measured by the second form of interest test. And the third form of interest test measures preference reaction to particular occupation like accountant, salesman, farmer, etc. So in interest test, basically the focus is to find out what is the interest area of an individual, and based on that only the same type of work or same kind of work will be given to him so that he is satisfied and motivated while doing his work, right? So the candidate who are selected in the employment or selection tests are being sent for employment interview. So the next step in selection process is employment interview. This is a very important screening tool for the candidates, right? Here face-to-face interaction is there between the hiring manager and the candidate, which assists to reveal, examine and assess the capabilities, qualities and traits of an individual to be selected. Here the recruiter or the hiring manager gets an idea about the applicant's personality that can be obtained by face-to-face contact. So the purpose of employment interview is basically to find out the suitability of the candidate and to give him an idea about the work profile and what is expected from the potential employees. Employment interview, two-way communication is done. That is, here the candidate comes and tells about himself, which is whatever is being asked from him, and the hiring manager too provides the candidate information about the job profile, about the environment of the organization, about the work culture of the organization, right? So here two-way communication is being done. It is the first stage of face-to-face interaction between the candidate and the hiring manager, right? What are the objectives of interview? The first objective is to seek more information from the candidate which is not mentioned in the application blank. Now, second is to judge an applicant's qualities and characteristics as a basis for sound selection and placement. Third is to verify the information which is given in the application form and in the application blank. Fourth is to give accurate facts about the job and the organization, such as nature of job, hours of work, so that the candidate can decide whether to join the organization or not. Next objective is to establish a feeling of mutual understanding, confidence and trust between the organization and applicant who is to be employed. And the final objective of interview is to create a good image and promote goodwill of the organization, because as I mentioned earlier that this is the first stage where the applicants and the hiring manager come face to face. So the role of hiring manager here is basically to give information, provide information about the organization to the potential candidate so that he becomes very familiar and he looks forward to work for such organization. Right? Now, there are different types of interview, few of which are mentioned here. First is structured interview, unstructured interview, then comes group interview, depth interview, stress interview, informal interview, formal interview, panel interview, and exit interview. All these forms of interview are just to find out the basic characteristic skills about the candidate. See, till now what is being done, whatever tests are being taken or whatever informations are being provided by the candidate, based on that only selection is being done, right? But here in face-to-face interview, the thing which will be seen is how far practically or how well a person can communicate about himself when he is in a real face-to-face situation in the organization, right? Now, structured interview is designed and detailed in advance. So, a structured interview is pre-planned, accurate and consistent in hiring the candidates, right? And whereas unstructured interview is just opposite of it. It is an unplanned one where the interview questionnaire is not prepared beforehand. Here, the effectiveness of the interview is very less and there is a lot of waste of time of both the employee and the hiring manager, right? A group of candidates are interviewed together. It is conducted to save time when there are large number of applications for a few jobs. So a topic is given to the candidate to discuss and the interview judges the candidate in the group based on the skills which they show in the group, right? So the group behavior is being basically seen like we discussed in the group discussion. Then comes depth interview. In depth interview, it is a semi-structured interview where the candidate have to give a detailed information about his educational background, work experience, special interest, etc. So the interviewer tries to find the expertise of the candidate. So in depth interview, the candidate is allowed to speak everything about himself in depth, so that the candidate gives each and every information about himself and the hiring manager gets to know how well a candidate can present himself and what are his expertises, right? Now, stress interview are conducted to discover how a candidate behaves in stressful condition. So here the interviewer basically comes to know whether the candidate can handle a complex job or not. So the candidate who maintains composure during a stress interview is the right person to handle a stressful job. Then comes informal interview. Now, informal interviews are interviews which are conducted in an informal way. That is, the interview is fixed without any written communication and can be arranged at any place. There is no fixed place where the interview will be conducted and there is no procedure of asking question. It will be a friendly kind of interview. Whereas the formal interview or planned interview is held in a very formal way. That is, the candidate will be intimated before the interview well in advance and the interviewer plans and prepares questions for the interview. Then comes panel interview. In panel interview, it is conducted by a group of people. So here 3 or 5 members of the selection committee ask questions to the candidates on different aspects. So here there will be one candidate and there will be 4 or 5 members who will be asking questions from one candidate. And the final decision will be taken by all the members of the panel collectively. And the last one is exit interview. So the exit interviews are basically conducted for those employees who want to leave the organization. And the importance of exit interview is to discover why an employee wants to leave his job. So these were the different types of interview which are being designed for different situations. Like for a job where the hiring manager needs to find whether the candidate will be able to tackle stressful situations or not, then in that situation, stress interview will be taken. So for different situation, different types of interviews are there, and the basic focus here is to meet the candidate face to face and accordingly find and assess his skills, capabilities which he is possessing, right? Checking references. The person who gives the reference of the potential employee is very important source of information about the employee, right? And the second is, at the time of filling application blank, every candidate needs to mention 2 or 3 references who can verify about the candidate. So these references whom the candidate has mentioned can provide information about the candidate's capabilities, about his experience, about the company in which he was working, and whether he has those skills, those qualifications, those work experience, those salary which he has mentioned. So reference checking is basically background checking, right? All the informations which are being mentioned by the employees that are being verified through the references. So in this step, the verification of the information given by the employee is done through the references. And the information provided by the referees is kept confidential with the HR department or the hiring department. Okay. Now, after checking the references, if it is found that the candidate has given valid information and he is not lying, then comes the medical examination. Now, medical examination is a very important step in selection process. It helps the employers to know if the potential candidates are physically and mentally fit to perform their duties or not. And a good system of medical checkup ensures that the employees' standard of health are higher and they are not sick, right? Now, after medical examination, the final step is final selection of the candidate and providing him employment letter. This is the final step. That is the last step in the selection process. After the candidate has successfully passed all the written tests, interview, medical examination, the employee is sent or emailed an appointment letter confirming his selection to the job. The appointment letter contains all the details of the job like working hours, salary, leave allowances, all the details are mentioned there. And often the employees are hired on conditional basis, whether they are hired permanently after the employees are satisfied with their performance. That is, for the initial basic 5 to 6 months, they are on temporary basis hired, and when their performance is seeing good, then after 6 months they are hired on permanent basis. So all the details are being mentioned in the appointment letter. So with this, the selection process ends and then starts the placement of the candidate. Placement and orientation of the candidate is done after this step, right? Now, what is the importance of the selection process? See, proper selection and placement of the employee leads to growth and development of the company. The hiring of talented and skilled employees result in achievement of the company goals. Industrial accidents will drastically reduce in number when the right technical staff is employed for the right job. Okay, and when people get job that they are actually looking for and what they are good at, it creates a sense of satisfaction in them, and thus these people will work more efficiently and effectively, and the quality of their work will be very high. And finally, the people who are satisfied with their job often tends to have high morale and motivation to perform better. So we see here that the selection process is very important, because if the selection process goes well, proper or good hiring of the employees will be done, and if the employees are good, then obviously the organization will get advantage due to it. So with this, we come to the end of this topic, selection. In my next video, I'll be covering training and development. So do like and subscribe my channel, which is Simplified Basic Concepts. Thank you.